Forensic Linguistics 2012. This is an iMovie to investigate the authenticity of suicide notes, by Lauren Sharp. How do we know if it's murder or suicide? A suicide note, to have credibility, must be seen to be making a definite proposition, although the situational context of the proposition may not always be clear to the casual reader. Within this presentation, I plan to explore the factors surrounding genuine and simulated suicide notes. In order to do this, I will be covering the different characteristics that forensic linguists look out for when they are researching this field. I will then further this research by using case studies as an example of how it is possible to gauge how genuine a text is. The job of a forensic linguist is not usually one to ask why a crime has been committed. However, in cases of suicide, it is important to try and discover why a person has chosen to take their own life. Although very obvious at first, the question of why can become very revealing within a suicide case. It is usually one of the first questions asked by a victim's relatives, as they are often confused as to why the victim has chosen to commit suicide. This event could be completely unexpected and irrational behaviour of the victim, which in turn could make the death seem more suspicious. Within the short period of time following a suicide, it is important to gauge what the relatives think and say about the situation. After the initial period of grief, relatives can often be seen to take on the popular views of suicide, and begin referring to the act as cowardly or crazy. This view, as a whole, allows us to see what people think about suicide. Once we gauge this popular view, we are now able to look at what may be placed into a fake suicide note. Many forensic linguists over time have used the opinion that in order to find out whether a suicide note is in fact genuine or simulated, you must compare genuine notes with each other in order to highlight the aspects that may be missing from fake letters. In 1957, the famous suicidologist and founder of the science, Edwin Shneidman, researched hundreds of suicide cases. He believed that in order to fully understand and identify genuine suicide notes, we first need to understand the fake ones. After looking closely at the numerous suicide notes, Shneidman believed that there was a form of diglossia within the writing of a suicide note. He split suicide writing into two types. These were what he called outsider writing and insider writing. Within suicide cases, the outsider writing is believed to be found within simulated notes, and is described as the language of an outsider, unlike the genuine insider who is genuinely intending to commit suicide and is therefore using insider language, which is found more prominently within genuine texts. Shneidman believed that within suicide notes it is therefore expected that the language found within a fake suicide note should mostly contain an outsider view, with references to unsympathetic popular views of suicide, such as it being cowardly or crazy, as opposed to a genuine suicide note, which with insider language should be more emotive and more reflective. Shneidman also observed that an act of suicide was the direct result of the constriction, the tunnelling of vision, and the pathological narrowing and focus on oneself, and the combination of these factors caused the suicidal state of mind that many victims go through in order to want to commit suicide. In 1957, Shneidman and his colleague Norman Farborough began trying to place some of these theories and opinions into practice. The two suicidologists carefully selected a group of their patients and informed them to write fake suicide notes. Once they had the fake notes, they compared them with a selection of genuine notes provided by a local coroner. The aim of this study was to see if they could highlight any significant differences within both the genuine and simulated notes. Although it is a common thought that only genuine suicide victims apologise to their families for committing suicide, the corpus that Shneidman and Farborough collected shows that there is actually little difference between the two types of text. One aspect that they did manage to use in order to differentiate between the two texts was the use of emotive language and phrases such as "I love you," "wonderful," and "loving someone." Also, praise towards the family members. This type of language was much more apparent within genuine texts. Simulated texts appear to avoid such phrases, and as mentioned earlier, outsider views appear much more prominently within the fake notes than within the genuine. John Olson, a recognised and skillful forensic linguist, also obtained a corpus of suicide notes. He too did this in order to gauge the authenticity of suicide texts. He collected suicide notes from the British Transport Police from victims who had committed suicide through jumping in front of a train. Olson chose this particular corpus because whereas Schneidman and Farbrouwer's corpus contained genuine suicide notes, not all of their texts could be certified as definite suicide. However, with the British Transport Corpus, the method of suicide allows for much more evidential proof that suicide is the cause of death. This is because the suicide usually takes place within a busy train station for people to witness, therefore giving police and coroners a more certain cause of death. The data collected from Olson's corpus was strikingly similar to the genuine notes studied by Schneidman and Farbrouwer from the coroner. The notes from the British Transport Police corpus showed that the same emotive and reflective phrases were used as the ones found in the Schneidman corpus. Through comparing both of the corpuses, Olson proceeded to conclude that the overall profile of the railway suicides and the coroner's notes were extremely similar. Walter was a young man from one of the southern states of America, who died from gunshot wounds. The girl he was with at the time claimed he had pulled a gun from his pocket and shot himself. Due to circumstances that Walter's mother deemed to be suspicious, and the county sheriff refusing to take the case any further, John Olson was asked by Walter's parents to analyse the note in order to distinguish its authenticity. In order to do this, Olson used similar methods that he had used in previous suicide cases. For Olson to get a clearer picture of how genuine the note was, he asked Walter's parents if they had any other examples of Walter's writing. As Walter's parents revealed it was very rare for their son to write anything, they only had one other text to offer. Olson analysed both the texts in close detail and tried to highlight any noticeable similarities. He used similar methods to both his previous cases and of other suicidologists in order to come to a conclusion. By using similar methods to previous forensic linguistic cases, Olson compared the text provided to the previous text written by Walter. He then analysed the language written within the note to try and highlight and distinguish any simulated features. Taking into consideration all that has been discussed within this presentation, Olson applied Schneidman's diglossia theory to Walter's case. Within Walter's note, there appears to be no outsider language contained, but much more insider language, as the note has much more emotion and is very reflective. Olson used these factors to conclude that although the circumstances which led Walter's mother to be concerned were worthy of suspicion, Walter's note was in fact what he believed to be genuine. Through the various aspects of research that have been carried out within this field, it is possible to conclude that through close examination of both genuine and simulated suicide texts, we are in fact able to distinguish between the two. If we are able to compare genuine notes with other genuine notes, it is possible to see where the similarities lie, this therefore making it easier to spot an outsider difference within a simulated text. Thank you for listening.